All right, change of plans. Change of plans, Callahan. I originally thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to defend Cole Buckley, the 21-year-old URI student who threw a water bottle at Kyrie Irving and missed him. I don't care what the cops say. They say he grazed Irving's head. He did not. He missed him. It was a stupid thing to do. We all agree. But, you know, he's young. He was drunk. He was mad. Kyrie's a dink. And it didn't do any damage. And I knew he'd be overcharged. He was charged with a felony assault with a deadly weapon. I'm sorry. I got a bottle of, what do I have here? Poland Springs in my hand. This is not a deadly, even if it's almost full, it's not a deadly.
What were they saying? Do we know, I mean, have we analyzed the bottle? We're analyzing everything else, but have we analyzed how much water was in the bottle at the time to know the impact it could have caused?
It's a good question. He's not a great shot. He didn't hit him, unlike Kyrie, but here's what I was thinking. He's going to get overcharged. He is overcharged. He's going to get castigated by everybody, dragged through the mud, called a racist, you name it. It's going to be the punishment is going to way exceed the crime. And that still might happen because he's going to be arraigned today. It was postponed. He did make bail, $500. But as I tweeted this out, we talked about this yesterday. This happens all the time. I know things are a little tense between fans and NBA players, and a lot of people think it's because the players are so woke and the fans are disillusioned with the game, and they have little tolerance, and their breaking point is, we see it. It doesn't take much. But again, a fan in New York spit on Trae Young, which is worse than throwing a water bottle. A fan in Philadelphia dumped popcorn on Russell Westbrook. These fans were kicked out. They were banned for whatever, indefinitely, banned for life. Fans in Utah said something to Jay Morant's family, and they got banned. This kid, Cole Buckley, is banned. That's fine. But he's the only one arrested and charged with a felony of all those. And I think it's because we're a little defensive in Boston. We're a little defensive, and for I don't want to say good reasons, but for obvious reasons. People like Torrey Hunter and Adam Jones have lied about Boston. People like Michael Che have lied about Boston. So if a white guy throws a bottle at a player who's most likely black, immediately they inject race into it. That's what Stephen A. does. That's what Max Kellerman does. That is what Kyrie Irving does. Kyrie's lying. He knows it has nothing to do with race. He played here. He knows what he's doing. He was just trying to make life more difficult for Cole Buckley. And I was prepared to say, this is insane, charging a drunk college student with assault with a dangerous weapon and perhaps putting him in jail. And we'll find out today. He might end up in jail for this. That is overcharging by any standard, by any definition. However, back to me changing my plan. I saw the video. Turtle Boy got it, posted it. It's hard to defend this kid. Hold on. Before you play it, we'll set it up because he threw the bottle. It's after the game. And the fans pointed him out to security and to the police, proving, again, that Adam Jones and Torrey Hunter are lying because the fans were quick to point him out for throwing a bottle. They don't like when people do that and give them all a bad name. If Cole Buckley had yelled the N-word, everybody within 5 sections of him would have pointed him out. They would have cheered when the cops arrested him. They would have been happy to tell the media what a scumbag he is. I mean, his life would be over as we know it if he did that. That's what happens when you cross the line in Boston, especially now. People have their antennas up and they're ready. They're ready to identify the bad guy, the racist. In this case, they identified the drunk college student who threw the bottle. But in this case, it is hard to feel bad for Cole Buckley because he live streamed his own arrest and sounds and looks about as obnoxious you can get. Now, I'm going to leave it to you to defend him because you're telling me this morning that it happens to college kids who get overserved. They do stupid things. But and I agree. Again,
you talk all the time about your college days. Like, what happened to you? Where did you go wrong here? I mean, he got drunk. He went to a playoff sporting event, got overserved. Probably, I mean, he looks like he remember. I don't know. We're assuming
He doesn't look like falling down drunk. It doesn't look like he was throwing up on his shoes. I mean, he's clearly drunk, and I think he would admit it. But here's where he loses me is I still am afraid of the cops. I have respect for the cops. If there's a cop there, a Boston cop, and I know that I'm in trouble, I don't live stream it. I don't make matters worse. That is what Cole Buckley.
Well, it's because it's not assault and battery. He's not like overly. He doesn't feel like he's overly disrespecting anybody. Any police officers by doing it. He just thinks he's drunk and it's funny. And obviously it's a stupid act, but we do dumb things when we're drunk, and that happens. Yes.
Okay. Do you think it's just dumb and funny, or do you think he's in real trouble? Because I think when the cops show up, I know again he's young and he's dumb and he's drunk. He has to be smart enough to know they're not just going to say you have to go. The game is over. I mean, the game's over. Of course, he's getting ejected. But when the cops show up, it's going to be worse, and it is much worse for him because the BPD was there, and now the mob, is demanding a pound of flesh. And we'll see again. It was postponed. His hearing yesterday. He's got it today. He's gonna go to jail. He's gonna go to jail with the person who spit on Trae Young or dumped the popcorn on Russell Westbrook. I don't know if we know their names, and I don't know if anyone cares. They got kicked out. The players expressed their disgust with the unruly fans, and they moved on. Only in Boston can we make this a 3 or 4 day story. And today it'll get even bigger because he'll be in court. Is he going to wear the Garnett jersey in court? Because that'd be a bad look.
I mean, he actually looks like he lifts. He looks like a muscular kid. I'm backing him from all angles on this.
That would be he's going to become the new face of mass holes everywhere.
Oh, he's a new producer of the Gerry Callahan podcast. I already told you yesterday. I'm vouching for this kid. I'm absolutely, especially now knowing he knows how to live stream. He's got all the credentials.
That's true. I've interviewed some people who aren't nearly as technically adept as this kid, but the guy in the Sam Adams commercial who's supposed to be your cousin from Boston who says, and it's not bad. It's kind of funny, and he does the speech at the wedding, and he's just an a-hole from Boston, this prototypical mass hole. I think Cole Buckley has dethroned that guy, and he is the face. And we don't need that. We don't need that because it's just such a stereotype. Although it would have been worse. It would have been worse if he had a Larry Bird jersey. Would have been worse. Or who would be another white? Or what's the point guard Pritchard? If he had his jersey, it would have been worse. He's wearing Kevin Garnett's jersey.
Are you just talking like this because you're like, now you're envisioning if it were your son, you'd be embarrassed, right? Like this is,
of course, but he could have he could have diffused it if the cops showed up and was sorry, officer, and then he said whatever, I made a mistake, I'm sorry, I apologize to Kyrie.
He threw a water bottle at a professional basketball player. Do you think
he's not going to do that?
Anything like he's not thinking of that.
I'm just saying he made matters worse by live streaming let's let our viewers.
Turtle Boy's the only one who knows about it. Turtle Boy, you and now us. We're the only ones.
We have lots of viewers and lots of listeners. Let's let them decide if they have any sympathy for Cole Buckley, who will be in court today, will be arraigned on felony assault charges today. But this was him after throwing the bottle when the cops and the security showed up.
That's the wrong guy right now. A wrong guy right now. They're trying to arrest the wrong guy right now. They're trying to arrest the wrong guy right now. The wrong guy. Not me. Not me. Not me. The wrong guy. Wrong guy. It's not me. It's not me. Wrong guy. Wrong.
I mean, he just screamed wrong.
Jesus. That is so obnoxious over and over again. And by the way, the security, if you're just listening and not watching, he looks kind of happy. He doesn't look scared at all. And the security guard tries to take his phone and he just pushes him away. He is just a punk. Let's be honest. He's a punk. And again, you and I both think he's drunk, but he was sober enough to articulate the words and hold up his phone and live stream it. And
the word you just chose to say articulate with that video. I mean, he is mangled drunk, Gerry. He's mangled drunk.
but
I would
again,
not be surprised if he woke up the next morning. And I'm not saying he didn't black out, but it's probably fuzzier than we think.
Woke up, Turtle Boy has it. He celebrated. I mean, you got that other video of that sound when he's getting out with his buddies. I mean,
you know when you have a few, and you kind of start.
He thinks this is. I'm sorry, but he thinks this so far. Not today when he's arraigned, but he thinks this is pretty cool at this point. He thinks the game's over. I did what I did. They're going to drag me out. I'm going to get cheered, and I'm going to be, famous or infamous. He doesn't think he's in any real trouble. He reminds me, in more than one way, of the January 6th insurrectionists who were taking selfies and having a good time and putting their feet on Nancy Pelosi's desk. They didn't think they were in that much trouble. They thought they were trespassing, maybe that the cops would kick them out. And now some of them have been in solitary confinement for 4 or 5 months. And some of them are going to go to prison, including the guy who put his feet on Pelosi's desk. He's facing 7 years in prison, and it's all political. They're all, just persecuting them and making an example out of them. What do you think happens today to Cole Buckley in court? Do you think they say, oh, he's a first-time offender, he's a college student, he's done some charity work, as Turtle Boy has shown, his frat has done some work for, environmental causes?
Yeah, so in the climate change guy, go in there with an AOC teacher, and you're clear, you're great, you're in good position. He's fine. He's
gonna go in. And you know what else is a bad look? When we see this video, and if people haven't seen it, Turtle Boy has it all, as always. He's got the video of this, and he's got the video of him getting out of jail and celebrating, and he just seems like the ultimate, frat boy, masshole, drunk punk. But today,
first of all, he's a college kid. They do, like, college kids do shit like this every weekend. I did shit like this every weekend. I did something stupid. I broke into the ESPN game day bus and stole all those stupid Home Depot signed helmets from Lee Corso or whoever, and Kirk Herbstreit. Went back to a party and handed them out to people at BC one night. All right, I did. So you do things when you're drunk. That's what you do. You do dumb things when you're drunk.
Does Barstool know about this? Your criminal history?
I'm an old man now. That was back in the day. I didn't get caught. I went and we had a good time. I was a legend that night. Thank you very much.
You're confessing now. I've done my share of stupid things.
I confessed that night. I tried to get laid off that story that night, and then nothing didn't work.
I've done my share of dumb, stupid, young college, drunk things too. But again, when the cops show up, when I know I'm getting lugged, I change. It's like a cop, confronts you or something. You just say yes sir, no sir. And I've taught my son the same thing. You don't mess with the cops because they can mess with you, and they are here. He's facing felony charges. When the guy who spit on Trae Young in New York, I guess New York is lawless, Wild West now anyway, but they asked Trae Young if he wanted to press charges, and he said no. I don't think anyone's asking Kyrie Irving, would you like to press charges? He probably would say yes, but they're not leaving it up to him. We will see. We will see if he gets the January 6th treatment today. I have a feeling he's going to, and he's going to get like 30 days and $500 fine, and everyone is going to say good after seeing that video that Turtle Boy posted, that the way he celebrated the arrest. People will not have zero. He could get 5 years in prison, and people will have no sympathy for him. That's the state we are in.
Well, that's not because of like you and I will have no sympathy for whatever he gets, because we think, at the end of the day, there's, repercussions to being a drunk idiot, right? You got to know that. If that's why he's paying a price, I'm all good. The people you're talking about are happy because he's a racist. Right, like that's the only reason it's a story. It's not a story because he threw a water bottle.
It is amazing, amazing. You watch. I know how these things work. There's some mention of racism, obviously, from Kyrie Irving and from Stephen A. on this. In a year, 2 years, 5 years, it'll be. You remember that racist fan with the Garnett jersey? It will just be an accepted part of Boston's sordid history. There's no evidence of racism. And again, we talked about this yesterday, and it's still a good question. You spend, to go to a game, you spend a lot of money, right? You got to park, you got to buy a ticket. He had good seats. I know he's young, but somehow we get the money, get the ticket. You buy beers. they're 10, $11 each. Hell, the waters. What's the water? $7.50.
2 beer limit though, by the way. 2 beer limit at the Garden, I believe.
Well, there's ways around that. You should know that better than anyone.
That is true.
But so you invest in this, you buy the jersey, which is what, 100 and something bucks of Garnett. You're obviously a huge Celtics fan, a huge NBA fan. Can you be a huge NBA fan and be a raving racist? I mean, what you're doing is cheering every night. You watch it cheering for young black guys. I mean, it just seems like a contradiction, a paradox for someone to be a racist and a huge NBA fan. I don't know. It seems strange, but there's no evidence.
I also don't love that. Was it Kellerman we played yesterday? I don't love that these people always go back to like, it was all over TV. Kyrie said that there's underlying racism. Do you think like this kid, Cole Buckley, who's on Snapchat 24/7 a day in college right now, is thinking about Kyrie Irving and underlying racism? He thinks that Kyrie Irving is a piece of shit who lied to his face and said he'd re-sign with the Celtics. He disrespected the fan base. So he got drunk. He had a good time and he threw a water bottle.
And you know what? The drunk kid is right. Kyrie is a dick, and everyone knows it. His old teammates know it. His teammates now know it. Everyone knows it, and they know. I mean, he's smart enough to know injecting racism was going to work in his favor because he doesn't like Boston, doesn't like the Celtics. He stomped on the logo to prove it, and he knows by injecting race he makes matters worse for the enemy. It's simple as that. But there's no evidence that Cole Buckley. I mean, Turtle Boy didn't go on his Facebook page and find swastikas and hood. It wasn't like looking at Ralph Northam's yearbook. He wasn't wearing a hooded Klan robe. Nothing like that. Of course, nothing like that. And it's just made up to advance the stereotype, the Michael Che, Torrey Hunter stereotype. It doesn't apply. It just doesn't apply. As far as we know now, Cole Buckley is a drunk, obnoxious college kid, but there's no evidence that he did it because of race. I mean, if Kyrie Irving were white and were obnoxious and were an a-hole, I'm pretty sure Boston fans would hate him just the same. It's just silly. It's made up. It's not fair. It's not fair to the other Boston fans in the area in general, because there's just no reason to inject race here. I mean, you could talk about what a jerk he is. You could talk about the deteriorating relationship between players and fans in the NBA, because maybe we're at that point, where they're literally spitting on players. Maybe they're disgusted with the players with their politics throughout last season, the bubble season, where everything was about Black Lives Matter and George Floyd and hands up, don't shoot. And maybe they look at what LeBron did to the cop Nick Reardon in Columbus, which was disgusting and despicable, and LeBron paid no price, didn't get fined, didn't lose a sponsor, didn't even get an admonishment from the commissioner for what he did, which was about as bad as you're ever going to see on social media from a player doxing a hero cop and threatening him. Maybe that has a trickle-down effect and people are disgusted with the NBA in general. We know the ratings stink, and they're going to get worse because the Lakers are one game from getting bounced. Celtics, I think, are a pretty good draw. They lost, although the Nets are a super team. One last note before we move on is I don't want to sound like that old guy that says, "Oh, in my day." But when
you're not doing good, forgetting all your college days and all the fun times you had, and not having this kid's back. You're not doing a good job with that.
All I'll say is, thank God there were no cell phones. Thank God there was no social media. I mean, I'd be a dead man. I'd be pumping gas somewhere, because I'd be, there'd be so many stupid things.
That's why it's stupid to go live after this happens, but that's a natural instinct for a kid like that these days. I know, and you could see on the video, and do you have the other video where he's like celebrating with his friends? You could see, you can't really see what they're doing, but you could see they're not exactly mourning the inevitable incarceration of their buddy Cole Buckley. Having a good time. It's a party.
That is after he got bailed. That is after he put up the $500 bail.
Apparently, that's what Turtle had on his website.
That doesn't sound like a guy who is afraid of what awaits him today. And the other reason I felt bad for him, and I still do in this regard, his father died 3 months ago. That's pretty bad for a 21-year-old. If I were 21 and my father had passed, I don't think I'd even be going. I'd still be, I'd be on a 3-month bender. I'd be drunker than Cole Buckley, and I wouldn't be at the game. I'd be struggling. And so you do cut him some slack because of that. Maybe he's still messed up from that. But I don't think the judge is going to give a damn. I think he's going to get over punished today, and I think everyone's going to applaud just like they did with the January 6th insurrectionists.
Yeah. Well, I said to you before the show too, and even if it's for the wrong reasons, like he is the face of racism in the country yesterday, at least, if not today. So it's kind of nice that he has some kind of support system, even if it's for the wrong reasons that night.
That's true.
Yesterday was not a good day for him.
He looks like he's got some good friends,
yeah,
and they like to have a good time, and they'll be there. Hopefully, they'll be there for him. Maybe they'll get to visit him, when he's in wherever, Plymouth, House of Correction, or
I hope he goes. I hope they put him in Walpole. I'll visit him every day. I'll bring him whatever he wants.
I don't know if you're allowed to. I told you my friend was in prison for a few months, and all COVID rules were still applied, even though everyone was vaccinated. And we'll get to that. But he wasn't allowed visitors. He was allowed like unlimited emailing because they didn't allow any visitors. But I watched some of the Celtics. It was embarrassing. I mean, we think Cole Buckley embarrassed the city of Boston. Let me say this Celtics team did much more to embarrass Boston than one drunk fan. They rolled over for the Nets last night, got smoked, got blown out, showed no fight. They lost in 5 games. Amazing. They won 1 game. I guess Jason Tatum just went nuts that night, and they won 1 game. But they're out. They're eliminated, and they went as quietly as you can go. It is remarkable. I'll say it again, to hear from former players like Kendrick Perkins, like Kevin Garnett, like Cedric Maxwell, how disgusted they were with this obvious sign of disrespect from Kyrie Irving when he stomped on the logo, wiped his feet on the logo. And that's obviously symbolic. Obviously, he's stomping on somebody. He's stomping on either the players, the coach, the organization, the management, the owner, the city, the town, the fans. He's showing you. It's like flipping a finger at you. Look at me. I'm disgusted. I wiped my feet on you. And it didn't faze any current player.
It's a great move, by the way. It is a great move.
It's a great move if you have James Harden and Kevin Durant on your team and you're rolling and you're gonna eliminate.
And by the way, we talked about how much, at least in the Celtics days, how much it came off like he didn't give a shit, like he didn't care, whatsoever about playing the game of basketball anymore. And at least he showed some kind of passion with that move like that.
He's a great player, but God, what a narcissist! I mean, he thinks that the world revolves around him. He just looks like such an obnoxious, jerk. I'll guarantee his teammates don't like him, but you don't get that impression from Celtics who knew him because they couldn't wait to hump his leg when the game was over. I'm waiting for somebody to turn their back on him or say some words to him or say whatever, defend the franchise. They didn't. All they did was take turns, line up to hug him. And as I tweeted, you see kids at the airport whose fathers come home from 2-year deployments who aren't as huggy as the Celtics were with Kyrie Irving last night, who weren't as willing or anxious to just grab him and hug him and hold him and pat his head, literally rub his back. The guy who did that to you and by the way, eliminated you and essentially spit in your face, figuratively, and not one of them seemed upset at all. It was a real problem. If I'm the owner, the GM, Danny Ainge, the coach, spreadsheet, I say, Jesus, this team was docile and it showed on the court and off. It was disgusting. I know Celtics fans were watching. They were disgusted because, I mean, Irving's a dink and he disrespected you and all they wanted to do was hump his leg. It was really kind of embarrassing for everybody. That was more embarrassing than young Cole Buckley tossing.
I'm not a huge Celtics guy, but it doesn't feel like anybody on that team, hopefully Tatum develops into it, but has any affinity towards the city of Boston, has any relationship whatsoever with the city of Boston. You felt it.
That's true.
Obviously Pierce was here for so long when Garnett came that Garnett immediately jumped into Boston. But
And Garnett chose, he chose to come here. It was a trade, but he chose. And he at first, you remember, he wasn't going to come here because it was racist.
Yep.
And then he came here and loved it. And now he defends it from wherever he is, defends it. Pierce loved it here. Kendrick Perkins loved it here. You got a guy like Tatum, who's a superstar. He's a 23-year-old superstar. It became a, top-notch scorer, right before our eyes in this season. Strikes me more as a guy who will be willing to go to a super team. One of these, guys like Harden or LeBron, who's, who will, pick his own team and his own teammates before he'll sign some long-term deal just because he loves it here. So be wary, be ready for that when we start hearing rumors, not yet, in a few years, that Tatum wants to play with, whoever wants to play with Trae Young somewhere, and they want to pull this guy and that guy, and they form a super.
Why not? They have all the power. It's not like
They sure do.
Teams literally have zero power now, so you might as well go form a super team and win a championship, and then go make whatever marketing dollars you can make out of winning a championship.
That's true. And we'll see. I'm rooting for Phoenix. I want the Lakers to lose. That's the extent of my rooting interest now. And then we'll just see which super team meets in the finals. And in Philadelphia, Joel Embiid got hurt. So and I don't root for Doc Rivers anymore. I used to. I like him, but he's super woke and everything's, and he loves loves Biden, even though Biden doesn't think black people like him can hire lawyers and accountants. I asked you, I think it was a year ago. I said I have an assignment for you every day. I want whatever the latest daily Biden gaffe. I wanted you to put it, like in the open, or put it in the show, drop it in just for a laugh, because there's virtually one or two things every day. And when he won the election, when he became president, which is still hard to believe, I said it's going to be tough because they're going to protect him. I mean, he's done one press conference. I mean, he doesn't do press conferences. He doesn't do interviews. He's very controlled. I mean, they write scripts for him when he talks for like a minute. They have a teleprompter and a script, but he can barely handle that, as we know.
Well, he did the whole advertising talk yesterday too, right? Didn't he do that line? We talked about that like 6 months ago.
He did it again. He did, and I don't know if that's in the script. I think that's ad-libbing when he talked about how many mixed race couples there are in commercials. Yeah. How much time is the president spending watching commercials? I don't even watch commercials. Doesn't he have a DVR? Why is he watching commercials? But I wasn't sure, and I want to get to this speech yesterday in Tulsa, because it was bizarre, and there was so many moments that you just shake your head and you go, that's the commander-in-chief. And I referenced one of the lines when he talked about black entrepreneurs are just as creative as white entrepreneurs. They just can't get lawyers or accountants.
The data shows young black entrepreneurs are just as capable of succeeding given the chance as white entrepreneurs are. But they don't have lawyers. They don't have accountants.
Is that written for him? I ask this every day. Is that really written on the teleprompter? Because it's bizarre, it's stupid, it's racist, it's wrong. I mean, you don't think black entrepreneurs have access to lawyers? I mean, A, there's plenty of lawyers, that you got a phone book, call a lawyer, and B, there's lots of black lawyers and liberal lawyers who would love to, work. And there's colorblind lawyers who just say, here's my rate, I'll represent you, I'll draw up the paperwork. Same with accountants. That's like a speech from 1950. That the black entrepreneurs can't find a lawyer or an accountant. And I wonder, why would whoever, Ron McClain or Susan Rice or whoever, Barack Obama, want that in the script? We know he's kind of just a front man. He's a puppet, and they tell him what to say. But why do they tell him to say that? It's like when he goes and he flirts with the 8-year-old girls. They can't want that. It has to be an ad lib. It has to be him just, following his impulse to flirt with or sniff hair of young children. It's just bizarre.
I just had to make sure the 2 girls got ice cream when this is over. Imagine how excited you'd be when you're 4, 5, almost 5 years old, coming to hear a president speak. My Lord. That
was in the middle of the speech. He walked down and whispered to a 4-year-old and walked back up and said, I just wanted to make sure they got ice cream. Most parents wouldn't be very excited to have their prepubescent daughters talking to our current president. It's a little creepy, but that was bizarre. There's no way his handlers, his supporters, his speechwriters wanted that in the presentation. But that's just what you get when you got creepy Joe Biden. But to me, the most notable thing he did yesterday was advance this lie that I know it's a coordinated effort with the media and the Democrats, which is redundant, of course, and we saw it after January 6th. Let's be honest, the January 6th rioters who trespassed on the Capitol did Biden a huge favor, did the media a huge favor. It allowed them to latch on to a new theme. When Trump gone, they could blame everything on white supremacists, even though there's no evidence that they're white supremacists who tried to overthrow the government. It's absurd, but that's the theme, and they're running with it. And they have decided that white supremacists are the biggest threat to the country right now, even though, and I've asked this before, I've seen other people ask it and tweet it, and they can't name a single white supremacist. They can't name the leader. They can't name the group. They can't name the event. Yesterday, he was talking about Charlottesville, which again is 5 years ago. And, there's been no sign of those people since. They've done nothing. We've seen buildings burn. We've seen businesses destroyed. Hell, we've seen whole city blocks destroyed, burned, looted. We've seen, statues torn down, courthouses set on fire right next to the White House. We've seen a police station burned to the ground in Minneapolis. Cops running for their lives and the police station burned to the ground. And I believe the punk, the arsonist most responsible, got sentenced to 4 years, which is probably about what Cole Buckley is going to get today. Anyway, we have seen Antifa and BLM go on this tear of destruction and fires and looting for over a year. And our president stands before cameras in Tulsa, looks in the camera and says, the biggest threat to our country is not ISIS, it's not Al-Qaeda, and obviously it's not Antifa. He won't even say Antifa. It's white supremacists. And I ask again, what have they done? First of all, I don't even know who they are. I don't even know what they are. I don't know if you know a single person.
What about that cute girl from The Office? Isn't she a KKK member for winning a pen?
Yeah, she's a bigger threat than Antifa, which nightly attacks federal property in Portland, which has destroyed. I mean, we've seen the after effects in Minneapolis after George Floyd, blocks of just destruction and rubble. Businesses, many owned by minorities, destroyed, never to return. And this empty suit in the White House thinks white supremacy. He started talking about Charlottesville again yesterday. I'm like, what about Kenosha? What about Portland? What about Seattle? What about New York, LA? What about city after city on fire because of your supporters and Antifa and BLM? But he doesn't want to mention that, and that's fine. I don't expect him to. I mean, he doesn't want to alienate his core supporters. But this idea that we're under siege from white supremacists is so bizarre. It's such a blatant lie that even if you're a big supporter, even if you're, Chuck Todd or George Stephanopoulos, you're wondering, how do I keep this theme going? Where do I go with this? You can't. I mean, we know 60 Minutes tried to interview Oath Keepers. There's like 17 of them in the whole country, and they have burned nothing. They've killed nobody. And he wants you to think they're a bigger threat to our country than Antifa or BLM or Muslim extremists. It's so strange, but he pours his heart and soul into it. Can we play the cut where he blames everything on these scary white supremacist boogeymen?
The joint session of Congress, according to the intelligence community, terrorism from white supremacy is the most lethal threat to the homeland today. Not ISIS, not Al-Qaeda, white supremacists.
Okay, question for you. He won't take questions, but what the hell are you talking about? Can you give me, 3 names? Can you give me 3 examples of lethal threats or lethal action by white supremacists? Because I could give you hundreds of examples of Antifa or BLM, killing David Dorn, Patrick Underwood. These are cops killed by BLM and Antifa, rioters, looters, criminals. I mean, we see it nightly. If you're watching the right network, you get to see the fires nightly. Show me the whites. Just show me. Tell me who they are. Maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe they're just so cunning that we don't actually know their names or see the destruction they're doing. And maybe they're doing it, under the radar. But to me, this one is so blatant and so obvious that it's not going to work. You can't create this something out of nothing. The country knows. People know they're not under siege from white supremacy. They don't even know what that is. What is that? Who are they? You can't give me any names. But then again, I don't think you could, tell me, what city you were in yesterday or what day it is. But you can tell me that black people don't know how to get lawyers and accountants. Imagine if Trump or even, George Bush or Mitch McConnell or Lindsey Graham said that. Black entrepreneurs, they're really capable, but they don't know how to get lawyers. What? Bizarre. I'd love to talk to the person writing the scripts and just say, did you mean, was that supposed to be in there? Really? But anyway, he's just making it up, and I don't think it's entirely his fault. He just doesn't know. He's just not all there. It's sad, but we do have a cognitively declining man in the White House. But he's not the. He's not.
It's all right. So isn't it August when Trump is back? Didn't Maggie Haberman tweet that yesterday that Trump is telling people privately that he'll be back in August?
I thought it was this month. I thought the end of June he was going to start holding rallies. And again, my suggestion is you start in D.C., Donald J., because you got dozens of your supporters who are still in jail, some in solitary confinement because they trespassed on the Capitol. And they are being politically persecuted and kept in solitary for trespassing or disorderly conduct. It's outrageous. The media doesn't care. In fact, they're all for it. God knows. The Democrats don't care. The Republicans don't even say much about it. But somebody has to do something for these people. I mean, you don't have to like what they did, but you have to admit the punishment does not fit the crime. They're being, their lives are being destroyed. One of them offered to put up $15 million bail, a guy who was, in the Capitol trespassing and, disorderly conduct. He offered to put up $15 million bail, and I believe an Obama appointed judge said, no, you're staying in solitary. It's just so wrong and so outrageous. And the people you see burning churches every night, especially in Portland and Seattle, don't spend 1 minute in jail. They don't even have to make bail. They get out. And if they had to, Kamala Harris's organization would bail them out, but they don't have to make bail. They get released in 10 minutes and they're out there burning churches the next night. But all right, let's get to Fauci. We got to get to Fauci because I asked this question when Cuomo wrote a book and allegedly made $5 million, which was another dirty deal for Cuomo, another scandal, because the book only sold I've hit the number. What did we say? 50,000 copies?
50,000 copies. Yep.
And even that seems high. I'm not sure who would buy a book from a man who has been lying the whole time. He covered up the deaths in nursing homes. He's guilty of sexually harassing his underlings. He's scum. He's just the worst. Why would you want to buy a book when he's not telling the truth? It's like with Hunter Biden, and he didn't sell a lot of books either. Hunter Biden, if he told the truth, it'd be a great read. It'd be wild. I mean, there's a guy who did crack with Marion Barry. He's done crack with all the stars and celebrities, and he's got a million dirty deals, pictures of him with, hookers doing blow off their, just wild stuff. It could read like the Freddie Mercury story. It could just be so sordid.
He was probably with Cole Buckley the other night with those guys having a good old time.
Yeah, man, we're not done with Hunter. Eventually, we're going to find out all about what's on the laptop, and it won't just be the New York Post. And I believe I've heard things that there's some stuff on there that's beyond even for the mainstream media, which is been burying the laptop story for whatever it is, 8 months now. Even they will be forced to report what's on there. But we'll get to that. They're still going to protect him for a little while longer. But Dr. Fauci, even if you don't despise him, you know that he's flip-flopped. That's what when Democrats or liberals like Fauci lie, you call it a flip-flop. No, you call it his views have evolved. They've evolved over the last year plus. I mean, again, it's a guy who told you don't need a mask. There's a guy who told you on March 9th last year to don't hesitate to go on a cruise. There's a guy who told you to keep looking for love on Tinder, that COVID shouldn't slow you down. Then one day he joined the crew who said we can't downplay this because that would help Trump. And again, we can't blame it on a lab leak because that would help Trump. So he came out knowing it wasn't true and said it was plausible or likely it came from a bat. He knew it wasn't true. He knew lots of things he said weren't true. He still does. He's a political creature. And that's the best you can say about him. The worst you can say is he funded the lab where they created the virus that killed 3.5 million people, including 600,000 Americans. He's in it up to his eyeballs. This isn't some, likable, great uncle figure who's the conscience of America. That was the image for about a month. And then people learned the truth about him. But the idea that in this last year, an 80-year-old bureaucrat, the highest paid person in the federal government, who's supposed to be working 24/7 to stop the virus, had time to write a book. And not only that, if you haven't heard, he's cooperating with a documentary from Disney who followed him around with a camera for like the last year. I mean, I know he's a publicity hound and an egomaniac, but that sounds even for Fauci to be a bit much, that his entire day there was a camera chasing him around and he found time to sit down and write or at least dictate when there was a virus raging. The guy, the head of the whole thing for our federal government had time to do that. I mean, jeez.
And we're also learning he responds to every single email that he gets from every single person that sends him one.
And by the way, he has a long history of liking to be in front of the camera, which is getting him in trouble. There was a video from, I believe, 10 years ago when he said this gain of function research where you try to take a benign pathogen and turn it into a deadly virus that kills humans, that it was the funding for that, the experimenting on that was worth the risk of a pandemic. And I guess he thought it was worth it. And now we have a pandemic and somehow he's viewed as this benevolent presence in Washington by some, I guess, some in the media, but most people know he's a flip-flopper and a fraud and a narcissist, and all he wants to do is be on camera every Sunday morning and hang with his friends Chuck Todd and Georgie Stephanopoulos. I can't imagine who would want to read that book. Yesterday we learned a member of WHO, the World Health Organization, thanked Fauci. A bunch of his emails came out, thanked him for supporting the theory that the virus came from a bat or a pangolin in the wet market. He supported that because, again, the goal was stop Trump at all costs. So you lie. Consider what the media did and what Fauci did. Consider this. They knew the lab leak from Wuhan was the most likely scenario. Hell, we all knew it. That makes much more sense, common sense. That's much more plausible than it leaped from a pangolin into a human. We knew it. He knew it. And Trump he didn't say definitively. He just said that that's what he believes. That seems plausible. That's more likely. Somehow that was viewed as racist. And I still don't understand that because your scenario is these weirdos in Wuhan are eating strange animals like bats and pangolins. It's their fault. And that's not racist. But to say it leaked from a lab where these scientists were experimenting on viruses, that is racist. I don't really understand. I heard John Carl said it Sunday that it was that Trump's theory was racist. I don't really. Someone explained to me how saying it leaked from a lab is racist, but leaked from a pangolin is not. Anyway, Now we get more evidence that Trump was right again, and the media. John Carl said, we have to admit that just because Trump said it doesn't mean it's wrong, which is that basically sums up the media for the last year or the last 5 years. That if Trump said it, it must be wrong. Trump was right. Fauci was wrong. That should be a big deal. This is the biggest story in all our lifetimes. One of the biggest stories in the history of mankind is where this virus came from. The person who did the experiments and allowed it to leak from the lab is essentially responsible for 3.5 million deaths and destroying countries, destroying economies. And the media wants to mislead you, lie, because they hate Trump so much. They're covering the biggest story they've ever covered, anyone's ever covered. And they're not telling the truth because it might help Trump one little bit. It's insane. It's the most insane indictment of the media I've ever seen, that they wouldn't tell you the truth about the origin of the coronavirus because it might help Trump. And by the way, it worked. I don't know if it swung the election, but it didn't help Trump, and he lost. So their goal, again, they can lie, they can mislead on the biggest story they've ever covered, and somehow they can rationalize it and justify it because their guy won, Trump lost. But
well, their friend, like you keep saying, Tom Elliott just tweeted out one of the emails, and it's from an ABC's investigative reporter. Starts off her email by saying, "I want you to know how much I have respected you professionally and medically for 20 years." Jeez. This is their investigative reporter, then goes off and, off the record quotes if need be and blah, blah, blah.
This is going to get bad for Fauci, and he's going to be like Cuomo. I'm sure when Cuomo started writing a book or forcing his underlings to write it for him, he thought he'd be able to pull it off. He'd been fooling the public for decades. He thought he'd be able to pull it off. He thought the media would do their job and cover for him. And they tried, but thanks to Janice Dean and the New York Post, we learned the truth about him. Thanks to a lot of grieving families, we learned the truth about him, and the book flopped. I don't get who's buying a Fauci book if you know he's not telling the truth.
I didn't see how much is he getting paid for this. Is that out there?
You know what? When we find out, it's going to be sickening because this guy, he must have so much money. He makes $417,000 a year. He gets paid extra for speeches and other things, appearances. He's 80 years old. He's been doing it for 50 years. And from what I can tell, he doesn't do anything except go to the office or go to the TV studio in the green room. That's his whole life. I'm going to guess he has millions, tens of millions already. He'll get millions for this book, which will be, if there were any real fact checkers, there aren't, but if there are any real fact checkers that started going through it, this book will be just full of, crap from flip-flop Fauci. One other thing we got to get to, Callahan, because again, I was thinking there's a tennis player named Naomi Osaka. Have you ever heard of her?
Not until all this stuff, but yeah.
Me either.
Yeah.
Well, what would you think if I told you Naomi Osaka made $55 million last year?
I would be shocked. It shows my sports consumption in general is going down. I was shocked. And this, what is this from? This is from Sportico. The story I have here in the New York Times too, but this is from Sportico, sports business publication. I think pretty reliable. I mean, these are just facts, but they're going through the highest paid athletes, and Conor McGregor is still number one. I mean, the MMA guy wins. How much did he make? 170 million. No, he made 170 million from his liquor company, and 208 total from last year. 208. Lionel Messi made 126. Cristiano Ronaldo 120. Naomi Osaka was by far, she's number 15 on the list total, which means women aren't getting paid enough or something like that. But she's number one for women, number 15 total, made 55.2 million. I didn't know anything about her. I guess I'd heard the name. She's won 4 Grand Slam events. She's number 2 in the world in tennis. I didn't know anything about her until she, till this latest controversy. And if you haven't followed it, she doesn't like talking to the media. It gives her anxiety. She said it's a mental health issue. They fined her at the French Open because she wouldn't talk to
the media after her first match. She just doesn't want to do it. And I was going to criticize her because they're asking you to do so little. We've seen this before. I always tell the story about Larry Bird, who didn't like talking to the media. Didn't give him anxiety, just didn't like it. And he'd sit down in the middle of the locker room, look at the clock, and he would talk. And most nights it was 8 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. And every once in a while he'd say, that's not a lot of, they're not asking a lot from me to every 3 days, every game, to sit here, answer dumb questions for 8 minutes. He was making a lot of money, and he easily rationalized it and said, I don't like it, but it's not asking a lot. I'll do it, and I'll fulfill my obligations. We also know about Marshawn Lynch at the Super Bowl, famously sitting there and saying over and over again, I'm just here so I won't get fined. Well, that wasn't apparently an option for Naomi Osaka. She didn't want to do that at all. And again, initially I was going to say, what is wrong with you? Just sit there and do it and get through it and win the tournament and make another $55 million. But I have to give her credit. She put her money where her mouth is. I mean, she walked out, quit the French Open rather than sit down for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Can you imagine anything easier than facing a woman tennis player, facing the tennis press, and talking about tennis? And she's really, really good at tennis. And I don't think she gets all that many personal questions or even, dumb questions about if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? She was being generally, I think, treated the way, the media treats Kamala Harris. They're there to support her. They're there to help her advance. They're there at times to cover up for her. I mean, the way they are with Biden or Kamala Harris, or you name it, AOC or Liz Warren, the media has a role, and it's to help certain people. I don't think they were going to come at her. I don't think they were going to be grilling her about her personal life. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's one or two people who do. Again, I don't follow what that.
Well, you're not getting that shit out of the podium anyway. Like if you're getting the good stuff or the hard questions come in private, I would assume you want that private.
Or if you agree to sit down with somebody, from 60 Minutes, and they talk about, something in your personal life, or you agree to sit down with someone at ESPN and they talk about how women are being mistreated because you're number 15 on the list. You only made 55 million. You're making less than all these soccer players and NBA players. And who else is ahead of her? Oh, Tom Brady, Lewis Hamilton, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron James. I don't think the average fan has a problem with that. There's a reason Tom Brady and LeBron James make so much more. They bring in so much more. I don't know why we just abandoned that concept when we free market principles. When we're talking about how much women get paid, it's like when these WNBA players and complain about how much less they make than NBA players. When the NBA has revenue of over $1 billion and the WNBA is barely squeaking by, nobody watches it. Nobody goes to it. Why should you get paid as much as the guy who brings in $1 billion in revenue? But anyway, Naomi Osaka is a woman of her word. She walked out when they said they had to talk to the media. She says it causes her too much anxiety. I don't think she's just playing the mental health card. I'd like to say it. She is, because she hates the media. I think she genuinely means it. And I think walking out on a tournament where you could have potentially made millions is pretty much proof that you are legitimately averse to sitting down and talking to the media. It seems easy. I don't think, there's a reason most athletes, most coaches do it. They're contractually obligated to do it, and they don't think it's that hard. They just sit down and talk. But in this day and age, you could play the mental health card for a lot of things, and, you get a pass. And most times it's legit. It certainly seems to be in this time. Maybe can't she get therapy, and can a shrink convince her that it's really not that hard? She says she's not good at it, talking to the media.
You don't think she would have figured out her options available to her as she's rose to fame and fortune through this? I think she would have figured that out by now if she could have.
If I could think of something really stressful, it would be playing tennis in front of millions of people with, my reputation and millions of dollars on the line, I think that'd be stressful. The only thing more stressful than tennis is golf.
Yep.
I mean, it's stressful. It's mentally wearing. That's why I hated tennis when I.
And Bubba, I was telling you before the show, Bubba Watson came out in support of her, says he has similar issues, and it actually is. It is a good thing because, to your point, like I would never associate somebody who plays professional sports for a living with all the eyeballs and attention they have on them during that actual activity to then have a problem with this side of it. So it does, it sheds a light on the issue.
To be the second best player in the world, to make $55 million, to win 4 Grand Slam events, you have to be mentally tough. There's just no way around it. And that person can't sit in front of the media for 10 minutes and answer dumb questions. You don't have to do it well. Again, we've seen a million athletes who can barely speak English. We've seen, total meatheads like, Roger Clemens, who couldn't put a sentence together. We have a president of the United States who struggles to read a teleprompter. I don't think Naomi Osaka was going to be was not going to perform real poorly in front of the media. In fact, she hasn't. There's no one who says, boy, she's stupid, or boy, she can't speak. Hell, we see people do it with an interpreter. We saw Hideki Matsuyama win the Masters, and then had to do everything through an interpreter, which all you get is cliches. You don't get any real insight, but you don't have to say anything. If we learned anything from Bill Belichick, that you don't have to say anything to fulfill your media obligations. She could literally sit up there and just give the most banal, cliche-ridden answers, and she would fulfill her obligation. She wouldn't get fined. She would back to the tournament. She'd make her money. She'd play the sport she loves. It has to be a real problem for her to walk away.
Did you read? I read a lot of articles and analysis on this, but I didn't read I didn't see anything that said, how did it exactly play out? Like, did she notify somebody that said, I am going to blow this off in advance, blowing them off?
And then she got fined.
Yeah.
$15,000. So, she
did it she did it the right way too. And a lot of people were still assholes to her about it.
I was just reading her quote, and it's just like, I don't speak well. I'm not comfortable. It caused me a lot of anxiety. And, that wasn't good enough. They said, you still have to do it. Now, if I think she's going to, kind of bring a note from her doctor and say, this is not good. But it seem bizarre. It's like, it's like, whatever, Steve Sachs can't throw to first, or John Lester can't throw to first. I mean, you could throw home, 98 miles an hour. You can't just toss it at first. It is such a mental thing to be a great tennis player, one of the best in the world, and you can't sit in front of 8 media people and answer questions about the third set and your volley or your backhand or whatever, your physical training regimen, what you ate and drank. And
especially at that level. And I know there's scrutiny on the pro level, but I would almost think from her perspective, it's the journey is probably, there's a lot more scrutiny. Like, she's considered a freak athlete when she's younger in life, and there's a lot of expectations that go along with it, and it can kind of build up and all this stuff. Once you reach the height of it all, I would think it would start to get better, but it definitely.
Well, you know what? I think it seems like now a showdown, because she's not going to speak to the media, and the other turning, whatever, the U.S. Open at Forest Hills. Did you see the Mike Barnacle quote?
I did see.
Talk about going to the U.S. Open at Forest Hills. The U.S. Open left Forest Hills 43 years ago, and Mike Barnacle hasn't been updated yet. But the U.S. Open, or whatever, the French Open, Australian Open, the Wimbledon, are they all going to make her talk, or are they going to say, we'll give you a special exemption? You have mental health issues. You can play. We need you. If you feel like talking, once where you're there, maybe not after every match, something like that. Or they're afraid it'll open a door and every player will say, I'm not doing it. If she doesn't have to do it, I'm not doing it. I mean, you heard Serena Williams talk about it, and she doesn't find it difficult at all. Like most athletes, you just sit down. The media is there for the most part. Again, like they're there for Joe Biden to help. They're there to support you. They like you. They're there to guard you up. As one great sports writer once said, the media is there to guard them up. And that's what they do, whether it's consciously or unconsciously. They look at great athletes and they say, my job is to tell people how great they are. And that's mostly what the tennis media does with great players. But apparently the 1 or 2 questions she doesn't like are enough to push her over the edge. But good luck to her. I'm sure she's in therapy, and I would think it'd be easy to have a plan if you're a therapist. Just have little mock press conferences, have her answer the questions, and tell her, drill it into her. It's really not that hard. It's much, much harder to play tennis, which you do every day. But we'll see. Good luck to Naomi Osaka. Maybe she'll start a trend, though, Colin. Maybe they'll all start saying, people who hate talking to the media, like, I don't know, like Patrick Reed. Someone said, I don't want to do it. I have anxiety. Oh, okay. You can go now. I don't know. I really don't want to do it. Anxiety. Sorry. But
I can't get out of my brain now because you just mentioned it.
Kyrie Irving. I'd believe it with him. He's got issues.
Can you imagine being in morning television or morning radio and thinking having Mike Barnacle on every day is like a win?
It is amazing.
Isn't that crazy? Like you guys wouldn't even have like Jerry Thornton on because you thought he was bad on radio, and he's got, I don't know if it's millions, but he gets millions of impressions on the internet, and it's just crazy to me. I don't know.
I tried to get Jerry Thornton on this podcast, and Portnoy wouldn't let him.
Oh, that's right.
He said we're the competition. I'm going, what? Whatever. It wasn't that important, but it is amazing. You're right. What gives certain people anxiety? We don't know. We can't. I can't explain it, but it would seem to be talking to the media for 5 minutes would be easy for anybody. But she's got that issue, and she showed it's legit by walking away. But anyway, we'll see if she starts a trend. Anyway, I will leave it there for today. I know you have a big trip planned up. When are you heading to New York to join the cult?
I am heading to New York. Well, I got a meeting there in a couple of weeks, actually. So I think the week of the 20th.
You're going to be there in person. You're going to get some swag.
No, I gotta go. I gotta go to the store for men and get a nice suit going up. I think they dress like really classy in that headquarters. So I gotta get suited up for the whole event.
You get there and you're going to get like some of the Saturdays for the boys banner.
Yes.
What are the odds that Cole Buckley has a Saturdays for the boys?
I saw a lot of tweets like that. Get thrown out and being like, if Barstool was a human, this is him. Right?
There's no question. But we'll learn more today. We will stay on top of that today. Cole Buckley, the fan who threw the bottle, missed Kyrie Irving. We'll find out just how over-sentenced he gets today, or we'll find out his fate. And we'll see what he wears. If he wears a Garnett jersey with no shirt under it to court, then we know he's completely nuts, completely off the rails. Maybe he'll even be drunk. I'm not sure what time his arraignment is, but we'll get the whole story on that and have it for you tomorrow. We'll have the latest on Cullinan's big move to Cully Heaven. He's going to New York next week to spend a day in Cully Heaven. I'll be curious as to will you actually get to meet the
Well, by the way, off me for a second, because the commenters are asking about this, CallahanPodcast.com, by the way. Producer updates from you. I've offered to give you some names. What's the status here? What's going on?
Oh, we've interviewed a couple, and we'll have a decision real soon. We got to decide whether we want a young guy who's really devoted to the thing, or an old guy who's reliable, knows what he's doing. There's a wide variety of applicants.
Got it.
But we'll have someone soon. When are you done again? Tell me again.
When am I done? I don't know. When did I tell you? I'd have to go back and tell you.
I got to write this down.
Yeah, you should write this down. I'm definitely done by the 21st. So that Friday would be the 17th would probably be the last show. So.
Well,
I gave you way more than 2 weeks notice. I mean, talk about a classy guy. Talk about a classy move.
You might be able to hang around longer because I heard your new boss has a tummy ache. So we never know. We never know how that'll go. That might be a long-term thing. But we'll keep you updated on Cully too. Cully's going down to the Barstool headquarters to meet his heroes. That's why he looks so giddy. You're going to be like Cole Buckley down there. You're going to be just now you're buffering.
We're ending the show. Now you're spouting off. I don't know. I'm happy it happened.
You're going to be in your glory. That's what you're going to be.
Sure.
And I'm happy for you. But anyway, Cullinan, we will leave it there for today. I'm Gerry Callahan. This is the Callahan Podcast, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.